Yo, yo. I just want to hop on here real quick and show you guys how I use Phaseplant. I get a lot of questions on Phaseplant, and I think a lot of producers are a little intimidated by it for whatever reason. But I mean, once you kind of get yourself set up and get the signal flow down, this synth is the most powerful thing that I've come across. So I'm just going to open up a Phaseplant here, and I'm just going to initialize this. So here we go, Phaseplant. Make sure you update to your newest version. Looks like I need to update, but they're constantly releasing little fixes. So I typically use an analog as my carrier, and I use a wavetable as a modulator because I get all my sounds from FM, or in this case PM, phase modulation synthesis. And this setup I'm about to show you is the most flexible thing I found to create just about anything. So I got my main synth here, my main oscillator there, and my FM source, my modulator. So FM works a little different in Phaseplant, but if you route your modulator using this green plus into the phase here, now I'm phase modulating that sine wave. So if I just turn on the audio, can get pretty crazy pretty quick. The second thing is that's really powerful in Phaseplant and every synth is controlling the FM with an envelope. So I tend to reach for LFO table because you can get a lot of different shapes really easily here. So let's route an envelope to that modulation using this yellow star with the equal sign. So now you can see this sine wave is getting triggered only when the LFO table hits from positive down to 0. You turn it up and it's going more and more. So if I hold down a key, we're getting our pulse here. So one thing I like to do is set up macros. So I'm going to macro the frame here so I can just cycle through this really easily. And I'll call that LFO shape. And then I'm also going to macro the speed of the LFO. I'm going to turn it down like pretty slow, not as slow as possible, but pretty slow. And then this macro will control it up to a pretty fast modulation. But these LFOs can go really fast, but I'll max it out around 12,000 hertz. So I'll call this torque. So now we're getting somewhere. And you can set up your harmonic tuning with an LFO as well. And this is where Phaseplant goes crazy, is with remaps. So if you open up the remaps and just do a quantize 8, and I'm gonna set a macro to control this remap. So now every time I turn this up, you'll see it goes up steps. And these steps are all, if you set your grid correctly, it looks like I need to fine tune it a little bit. So I have 8 steps here. So this is 0, and then I'm gonna magnet it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 here, actually 8, but, and then I'm gonna use this, I'm gonna route the remap into the harmonic tuning of my FM source, and I'm gonna have it go up 8 harmonics. So when I I'm gonna call this FM tuning, this macro. So when I turn up this macro, you can see how it goes to the second step on the remap, and you see my wavetable. It goes to the second harmonic, and the third and fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. So now we have a tuning system that is harmonically locked. So we can get really quickly a bunch of different tones here just with a couple macros, and we know it's all key synced. So yeah, explore remaps. These things go crazy. And I'm going to take you one step further on remaps. So I'm going to open up another modulator, and I'm just going to put it for sine for now, and I'm going to FM modulate my initial FM modulator. So I'm going to route this into phase, and now we're getting pretty grimy. And let's say I only want to turn on this second FM source sometimes. So I'm going to macro this level up to 100. So I'll call this, I'm just going to call it oscillators, because we're going to take it a little deeper as well. So and then from here, let's add another layer, another modulator, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to modulate this into this FM. But I want this oscillator, I want this macro to only turn on modulator 3 sometimes, like, because it can get pretty crazy and I don't want it always on. Like, that's pretty grimy. I don't want it always on. So I'm going to use a remap again. And I'm going to map that oscillator to my remap. And my remap, I'm going to turn my modulator 3 down. My remap to my third modulator. But I want this macro. See how I turn it up, and at 1%, modulator 3 is already going up. I only want oscillator 3 to be turned up once I hit 50% on my macro. So 50 to 100, I want it on. And so you can do that with remaps. So right now you have this linear slope, but if you put it like this, so the linear is only at 50%, you can see as I'm turning up this macro, even at 40%, it still hasn't turned on the oscillator until you get past 50. And now we're starting to get it to turn on. And I'm actually going to remove my initial macro onto modulator 2, and I'm going to set up another remap, but I'm going to do it a little differently. So I'm going to have oscillator 2 turn on to 100% wet at from 0 to 50% of the macro. And then I'll map, oh, I messed these up. Okay, so I need to reset this one. This is my modulator 3, or sorry, yeah, my modulator 3. And this is my modulator 2. This one's going to my analog at 100%. And so you'll see here, oh, there we go. So it's oscillator 2, sorry, my oscillator macro turns up. I got my modulator 2 turning on. When it gets past 50%, then my modulator 3 kicks in, and we can get some pretty crazy sounds up in there. And so again, modulator 1 going into my sine, 2 going into 1, 3 going into 2. I don't have envelopes controlling these. You can, but I don't really, I find you don't really need it. And so now we're pretty set up here. We're pretty set up to get crazy pretty quick. So the first thing you can do is just swap out wavetables. So you can just randomly pick some. I tend to pick the spectral because I like how they can go from somewhat simple to pretty crazy. And I'm going to macro this again, macro the frame so I can easily choose, and I'll call this, I'm just going to call frame. And you could macro these harmonics again, but I tend to just do them static, something that I'm consistent. Like I don't really need to modulate them that much. I tend to not need to modulate them that much. And so our LFO shape, and we're free right now. So if we go to our main LFO, if we go to sync, you can see our torque is not mapped there anymore, but we can remap it. So I'm going to torque, and I want it to modulate from 1/16 to 8/16. And so now we can trigger back and forth from sync to free. And we still have this LFO attached. So now it comes down to your processing. So first things I tend to do is widen up the sound with a chorus, flanger, and a phaser. And I'll usually turn these down to like 25%-ish and just kind of randomly tweak some knobs a little bit just to get so it's not default. And then I put those there, tuck those away. And so I notice in Phaseplant you can get really interesting textures by stacking loads of effects. So you can do this with Snap Heap or Multipass. I think I have some Snap Heap racks here. Maybe I'll just show you how some default ones I have. So for bass music and dubstep, I've been really into comb filtering lately. So I have this comb filter rack that, this is it a multipass? In any case, I'll just build it real quick. So let's open up a Snap Heap and let's build a comb filter. So I'm just going to bring it down 80, and I want to modulate the frequency, and I want to modulate the mix. And I'm actually going to key track this frequency with a note. So then here we go, and this will be macro will be called freak. This one will be called mix, and then let's just duplicate this like a bunch of times. So we got that, and let's even just keep doing it. And so now we have lane 3 going into lane 4, but I don't want lane 4 to always be on. I only want it on when I really want to get crazy. So I'm gonna macro the mix here. Cool, so now we have a comb filter rack. Let me just save this real quick. And I'm actually gonna put this into a multi-pass because I want to preserve the low end here. So let's open up that comb rack we just saved. What did I call it? Combs 4. And let me macro these knobs again. Then I'm also going to macro the cutoff here. Let me just name these. This one is freak mix multiply. Okay, sounding pretty crazy right now, but it's giving us a lot of rich harmonics that we will want later on. So I used to use the distortion a lot, but nowadays I just use the shaper, and I'll kind of just, I'm gonna turn that comb filter off for now. Kind of just do something to kind of beef it up a little bit. Cool, there we go, and we got shaper. And the other thing that goes really fucking crazy in Phaseplant is dispersers. So I'm gonna do the same thing that I did with the combs and just do loads of dispersers. Let's do a freak macro, and we'll do an amount macro and a pinch. Amount, and then we'll just duplicate this loads, and then we'll do another one that has a multiply. So this macro will be called multiply. Okay, cool. So before we get too carried away, we can add a designated sub here, and I'm gonna send this to lane 3, and I'm gonna have my lane 2 go straight to the master. So that way these two lanes are summing together. I have my mids and my sub. And my sub, I'm just going to push it a little harder and distort it. And then let's low cut my mids. And I'm going to, okay, cool, yeah. So we can control that high pass with the offset right here. Cool, so we can do some filtering. And we can put some reverb if we want. I have a little reverb rack I built. Let's just put a limiter here. And I'm going to low cut this whole thing after my limiter. I'm going to control this disperser amount with a macro because I may not want it all the time. And also same thing with the comb filter. Cool, so I mean, we're already getting pretty cool tones here. And then you can just swap through like all the wavetables. Sometimes I like to control the master pitch with a macro, and then I'll just control that modulation by that same LFO. Yeah, so I hope this kind of gives you an idea on how to set up your Phaseplant so you can get a bunch of crazy sounds really easily. Let's save this real quick, and so we can open it up anytime. Let's call it Crazy Bass. All right, until next time, peace.